Good morning, boys and girls. Today we'd like to talk about another signpost called Notice and Note, Words of the Wiser. Think about it. Words of the Wiser are a time in a novel when the main character or the protagonist is receiving advice from a wiser character in the story, usually someone older, but not always. And so when we come to Words of the Wiser, which is when you're reading and a main character who's probably older and wiser takes the character aside and gives serious advice. You want to stop and ask yourself at that point, what is the life lesson? How might this lesson affect the character and ultimately the story? And when you stop to think about Words of the Wiser, you'll often have information about the theme and the conflict of the story. So let's talk a little bit more about Words of the Wiser. For instance, when your parents sit down and tell you about why it's important to be friendly to people you meet, or why it's important to follow the promises that you've kept, those are words of the wiser, a wiser older character telling you, the protagonist, about information. And ultimately, it is a life lesson. It is the rule your parents want you to live by. So when looking in a novel for places where the theme or the conflict is talked about, words of the wiser are often one of those spots. Now, some of you may be asking, is words of the wiser a paragraph or a sentence? And the answer is, it can be both. Sometimes characters just receive a one-sentence advice. But more often, you're going to recognize words of the wiser because it takes place in a paragraph or even a page or two. It's part of a larger conversation that the main character and the wiser character may be having. At this time, I'd like for you to take out your pages on Words of the Wiser, page 20. And it explains again the definition at the top. And I'd like for you to find that in the first and second paragraphs and go ahead and highlight that. It reminds you of the anchor question, how might this lesson affect the character? And what is the life lesson? And how might it affect you as a reader? The first passage is from Tuck Everlasting, and you should read the whole passage and then think about the answer to the anchor question, which is, what is the life lesson and how might it affect the character? In addition, passage 2 is from the book Walk Two Moons, and you should read the passage and answer the same question. Notice that on page 22, there's a quick tip. And it talks about, we'd like for you to highlight that. And it talks about the scene is between the main character and a person offering advice. And when you will read that, often that is advice that might be good for you in your own life as well. Usually it's a lesson the author wants you to have. And then on the last page, there's also quick tip on page 23. Which is sometimes characters don't follow the advice of words of the wiser. And oftentimes that is part of a larger conflict that you'll see in the story. So sometimes there's a variety of literary elements that are converging in the same spot. Happy reading, and hopefully you have found that all 6 of these signposts are very helpful in reading and in improving your understanding and comprehension of the text. Bye now. So, no, can't stop that one.
Can't see.